Hi, Romans here and welcome to another installment in my Worst to Best series where I take a discography of a band or an artist and I rank all of their studio albums going from worst to best based on my own personal opinion. I also review all of the albums from a viewpoint of a musician, as I am a singer, songwriter and a bass player for my own group Jakobe, and last year we have released our debut album called Pursuits in Life. What makes it unique is that it's a pretty heavy prog rock without guitars. Instead you have drums, bass, saxophone and keyboards. You can check out 2 of our music videos on my YouTube channel. We're building our own monument and Fake the New Kind of Beauty, and also a studio live take of A Way to Oppose. Description of all these videos you will find all the information about where's the record available. It's available on all digital platforms like Spotify, Tidal, Deezer, iTunes, Amazon, Bandcamp, but also in this digipack version of a CD with a very beautifully illustrated 20 pages long booklet. So in case you want one, all you need to do is contact me via an email, on Facebook, on Instagram, or you can get one through Bandcamp. And today I'm going to rank all of the studio albums from Peter Gabriel.
Music review.
Peter Gabriel is one of my favorite artists. I really like his music a lot, and he rose to fame as the first singer of one of the biggest and most influential prog bands, Genesis. He was there since 1969 until 1974, and he recorded 6 albums with them, 5 of which, so all of them with the exception of the first album, are really very impactful for prog music, with Sell in England by the Pound being actually considered to be one of the best in the genre. After he left Genesis, he recorded 7 solo albums, and 7 is really not that many. Of course, it's always quality that beats quantity, but he also recorded 4 soundtracks, and at first I didn't know how to approach this video and whether to include his soundtracks or not. I've listened to all of his 4 soundtracks prior to making this video, and quite honestly I think soundtracks like Ovo, Long Way Home and Birdie are pretty skippable, and I would personally recommend them only to die-hard completionists of Peter Gabriel. I know that I'm not planning on returning to them anytime soon, if at all, but one of his soundtracks, Passion from 1989, which was actually his second soundtrack, was a pretty big deal back in the day. It was an album that popularized world music, and he also won a Grammy Award for it. He put together a lot of musicians from like Africa, Asia and so on, so it was a pretty big deal back in the day. And really, Passion is a great album that you should definitely check out if you're a Peter Gabriel's fan, but the only problem with it was that I needed to be in a very specific mood to really want to sit down and enjoy this album, and I wasn't in that mood very often, so that's why I actually prefer all of his solo albums, but it's definitely an album you should check out because sonically it's amazing. And my personal favorite track was, I think it's called World Drum or something like that. It was the only sort of an optimistic, uplifting track on the album. Okay, so with that in mind, let's look at his 7 studio albums. So at number 7 I have Peter Gabriel 2, also known as Scratch, from 1978. This album opens up with a very cool rock song, On the Air. Also, Do It Yourself is fun. I really like the proggy White Shadow.
Like a white shadow. She comes out like a white shadow.
And I totally love the saxophone in the songs like Perspective and Home Sweet Home.
Oh, God, if that's your name.
There's also King Crimson-like song Exposure. It is a very solid album, but in my opinion it's not as memorable as the rest of his albums, and when I was listening to it I always felt as if this was his weakest effort outside of the soundtracks. Number 6, Seoul from 1986. This may be a bit of a controversial choice. Seoul makes for a very logical starting point with Peter Gabriel because it's his most accessible and definitely the most successful album, and a lot of people actually consider it to be his best. The opener, Red Rain, is one of his best songs and I think it's sonically absolutely amazing. I know that some people may see the 80s production as being a little outdated, but I personally love it.
Hey, we touch. This place is so quiet, sensing that storm. Red rain is coming down. Red rain.
And very similar in that regard is the track That Voice Again, sonically. There's MTV smash hit Sledgehammer.
I wanna be your sledgehammer. Why don't you call my name? You better call the sledgehammer.
The music video for this song was actually one of the most played music videos on the MTV. I think it was even the most played at certain point. Also, another power pop song here is Big Time. And also a potential hit, In Your Eyes. Very nice pop song with influences of world music is Don't Give Up, which also features Kate Bush on vocals.
Don't give up. I know you can make it good.
Though I saw it all around, never thought that I could be a fainting.
Mercy Street is a very soundtrack-like song that kind of sounds like coming from the previous album 4.
Nowhere in the corridors of pale green and grey. Nowhere in the suburbs in the cold light of day. There in the midst of it, so alive.
And also, We Do What We're Told is similar in that regard. This Is the Picture is probably the only song I never really liked on this album. Number 5, Us from 1992. So this was the follow-up to the album Soul, and it is in many ways based on that accessible pop kind of music. I really like the opener, which is an uplifting world pop song, Come Talk to Me, which kind of sounds like from The Lion King.
Come on, come talk to me. Come talk to me. Come talk to me.
And very similar is Secret World.
So I watch you wash your hair. Underwater, unaware.
Love to Be Loved is a bit more emotional, similarly to Washing of the Water, which is a very beautiful piano ballad. Blood of Eden has beautiful vocals and melody. There are some more groovy rock songs, like for example Steam or Kiss That Frog.
Give me steam. And how you feel can make it real. Real as anything you see. Get alive with the dreamer's dream.
Then Eastern influenced Only Us. And of course a big pop hit, Digging in the Dirt.
Don't turn around. This is for real. Digging in the dirt. Scarily I need support.
So yeah, I think that this album is really great from start to finish. Number 4, Up from 2002. So this was the follow-up to the previous album, and as of now it's his latest effort. To a high degree this was pretty much based on that style of the album Us, but I would say it's much more artistic and more experimental in a way. Darkness is an interesting song that has some industrial parts mixed with a very emotional and beautiful melody.
Beneath this skin, these fragments crack.
when I allow it to be. There's no control over me.
Then groovy electronic Growing Up is a cool track, and especially that riff that enters somewhere towards the end of the song is pretty unpredictable but so cool. Sky Blue has great vocals at the end. Also, I Grieve is an emotional track.
And I can't handle this. I grieve for you.
Then Uplifting More Than This creates a contrast to this track.
So much more than this. There is something else there. When all that you had has all gone.
Also orchestral Signal to Noise. So I think that this is pretty much fantastic album from start to finish. I do have to say that this is a pretty challenging album though, so you will have to be patient with it, but if you are willing to invest some time into getting to know it, you will be rewarded with one of his best works. Number 3, Peter Gabriel 4, also known as Security from 1982. This album has only 8 songs, but it's definitely his most challenging album because of the nature of certain tracks. So first of all, the album opens up with a very epic and almost tribal in its nature track, Rhythm of the Heat. But then we have 3 tracks like San Jacinto or San Jacinto, I'm not sure how it's pronounced. It's a very sonic and very slow track with a really subtle melody. So this is a track that you will have to keep listening to a lot of times to really get into.
I hold the line of strength that pulls me through the field.
Similar in that regard is The Family and the Fishing Net, and also Lay Your Hands on Me, with the latter being probably the most memorable one. Then there's the electronic song I Have the Touch. Probably the catchiest song is the hit Shock the Monkey, which I really love.
Watch the monkey get hurt, monkey. Shock the monkey. Shock the monkey.
Also, Wallflower has great melody. And the last track, Kiss of Life, kind of sounds like more rocked up version of the first track on the album. So generally I think that this is a very good album, but this is definitely not a very good starting point if you have never listened to Peter Gabriel. Number 2, Peter Gabriel 1, also known as Carr from 1977. So this was his debut album, also this was my introduction to him, and I think that similarly to Seoul, Carr makes for a very good starting point with Peter Gabriel because it's a fantastic album, and what I especially love about it is how colorful it is. Every song is pretty much different. This is something that I was going for with my album, but there aren't really that many records like this. So the opener, Moribund the Burgermeister, if I pronounce it right, is kind of reminiscent of his previous band Genesis.
Round and round, where the sun gaze. I look at that cloud, sun dripping up in the air, it's drowning in a tunnel of blood.
Then a big poppy hit, Salisbury Hill.
To keep in silence, I resigned. My friends would think I was a nut, turning water into wine.
And similar in that regard is pop rock hit Modern Love, southern sounding humdrum.
I seem to me that television, she come to cut me a deep incision in the humdrum, in the humdrum.
Rock song Slow Burn, Cabaret, Excuse Me.
Excuse me, I'm not the man I used to be. Someone else crept in again. I wanna be alone.
Bluesy, Waiting for the Big One.
I'm beginning to think, yeah, I'm just out of place. Won't get in too deep. I won't
Orchestral, but also funky at the same time, Down the Dolce Vita.
find a way, make it right. You guys are crazy.
To the epic ending, Here Comes the Flood.
Lord, here comes the flood. We'll say goodbye. Flesh and blood.
If you're a fan of Peter Gabriel, you know which album is coming up now. So at number 1 I have Peter Gabriel 3, also known as Mels, from 1980. This may not make for a obvious number 1, and similarly to the records like Up or 4, this is also a pretty challenging album. I would say that this is an album that defines art pop for me, and is one of the best albums in that genre. This may not be a very ideal starting point, but if you are into prog music, then you will definitely love this album. So it has a proggy opener that kind of reminiscent of King Crimson, Intruder, and this is actually a pretty unnerving track. The No Self-Control is kind of like a rock song made with non-rock instruments. It's very experimental. Then I Don't Remember is one of his rockiest tracks.
I don't remember. I don't recall. I got no memory of anything at all. I don't remember. I don't recall. I got no memory.
And Through the Wire is more accessible. I also love the groovy Not One of Us.
Talk like we do, but you know how it is. You're not one of us. Not one of us. No, you're not one of us. Not one of us. Not one of us.
One of my favorite tracks on the album is Family Snapshot. This is such a beautiful art pop song that will take many listenings to appreciate, but it's well worth the time.
Man at the hour, silent ability. I don't really hate you. I don't care what you do.
Then Games Without Frontiers is such an interesting and experimental track. Then Lead a Normal Life is kind of that soundtrack-like song where I think that his potential for writing soundtracks kind of started appearing. And the world music was fully realized in the final track, Biko. kind of foreshadows his musical direction from this point on. There you have it. This was a pretty difficult video to make because up until the last moment I wasn't sure how to put these albums, because quite honestly you can't go wrong with any of his 7 solo albums. He's a phenomenal artist. I would really love to see him release another record, but the material he released so far is just really mind-blowing. I totally love it. You can let me know in the comment section below whether you agreed or disagreed with me. You can also let me know what is your own list of Peter Gabriel's albums going from worst to best. You can follow me on Facebook or on Instagram. You can find the links to both in the description of this video below. If you like this video, don't forget to like, to share, to subscribe. You can check out my own original music, my live performances, my other reviews and other worst to best videos as well. Thanks a lot for watching.